What's going on, everybody? My name is Michael Weir, and today we are going to talk about a brand new movie called Dungeons & Dragons Honor Among Thieves. Now, on Dungeons & Dragons Honor Among Thieves, and you know what? That's the last time I'm going to use that entire title. It's way too long. I'm just going to call it Dungeons & Dragons. But anyway, Dungeons & Dragons is based on a game, and movies that are based on games usually aren't great. Last year, I believe we got Uncharted, and it wasn't terrible, but it just wasn't anything that I wanted to rewatch pretty much ever again, and I don't care if the franchise continues. Just didn't work for me personally. But again, this is a movie based off a game, and it's a game that I've never played. So going into this movie, I was like, all right, well, I don't really know what to expect here. And then I saw the previews for this movie, and it looked like it was going to be a fun time. And I was like, you know what? If I can just have a fun time while watching this movie, I'll be a happy man. So I went and saw Dungeons & Dragons, and I had a fun time. So let's do the review. And so, guys, Dungeons & Dragons is directed by John Francis Daley and Jonathan Goldstein. Look, I don't know if they were co-directors or if one person started, the other person finished, or, I don't know, and I don't care enough to look it up. But let's get into the actors. First up, you have Chris Pine, who is my favorite Chris in all of Hollywood, and I loved his character in this movie. He is a thief, he is a scoundrel, but damn is he fun to watch on the screen. And I feel like that's what Chris Pine can bring to a movie. Anytime I hear he's going to be in it, I'm like, all right, this character is going to be a little quirky. He's going to have something, he's going to bring something to the table that nobody else can in this movie, and that's what he does. Next up, you have Michelle Rodriguez, who is basically playing Michelle Rodriguez from the Fast and Furious movies, but in a Dungeons & Dragons setting. Yeah, I mean, she just doesn't have much range, in my opinion, so she just comes in and she gives her lines the same way she gives her lines as Letty, and it's fine. I was expecting Vin Diesel to show up the entire time during this movie, but he didn't, so okay, fine. And then finally, we have Hugh Grant to talk about in this movie. Hugh Grant has played some really quirky roles lately. Most recently, he played in the movie Operation Fortune, which is a Guy Ritchie film that if you haven't seen, you should probably check out. I loved his performance in that movie. I had problems with the rest of it, but I really loved his performance. And then going back to another Guy Ritchie film that came out in 2020, he was in a movie called The Gentleman, which if you haven't seen, you are doing a disservice to yourself. You need to check out The Gentleman. It's a really fun time. But I enjoy his character, so anytime his character shows up on the screen, it made the movie that much better. As for the setup of this movie, guys, you've got Chris Pine's character leading a band of thieves to go find a bunch of gold, but most importantly, a trinket, a magical item that can resurrect, or he believes can resurrect, his dead wife. And when they get to their prize, when they finally make it there and they get their trinket, they get double-crossed by other thieves in the group, and then they have to go on another journey, form another band of thieves to go rob the other thieves that double-crossed them. That also involves witches and wizards and a dragon, and so that's the setup I have for this movie. I don't want to go into spoilers because this movie did take a couple twists and turns that I really enjoyed, especially one that centered around a joke about a guy named Jonathan. Listen, if you haven't seen this movie, when you get to that moment, and they're talking about a guy named Jonathan, they are setting you up for a hilarious joke that I absolutely loved. And if you have seen this movie, we'll put that in the comment section down below and let me know if that joke worked for you as well as it did for me. Really set the tone for the whole movie, in my opinion. But let's talk about my likes and my dislikes, guys. I just talked about a joke that really worked for me, so let's get into the comedy. That is one of the likes I have for this movie. I really enjoyed all the ways they make you laugh in this movie. They take time to set up some jokes, which really worked for me too. There's a joke right toward the end of the movie that uses this very serious moment, or you think it is, but it actually is part of the plan all along, and it is a really funny joke, and that really worked for me. So yeah, the comedy was put in here pretty well, and I enjoyed what they did with it. But talking about the comedy, we got to get into the horror aspect of this movie, and that's right, there's a little bit of horror aspect to this movie, like not enough where you can't take your kids. This is very family friendly, but there's one character in this movie who's a red witch, and anytime she goes full red witch, it's pretty scary. But there's one moment that legitimately scared me during this movie. It wasn't a jump scare. It was this moment where you see her start to transform and she freaks out. And it really worked for me. It was a really good scare, and it really it made I had to look around the theater and make sure that I was still in a theater with only 10 people and the Red Witch wasn't suddenly next to me. That's how I felt. The action scenes are fun in this movie. Look, if you're a Dungeons & Dragons fan, you're probably not big into action as much. I mean, you're playing a board game, so it's not like, oh, well, it's a video game, we have to see the action happen. You're playing a board game. But in this movie, the action scenes that happen, they're fun. There's a very, very fat dragon in this movie, and I really liked how that whole scene went down. So I don't know if that's a play on the game, because again, never played it, didn't research. there's a really, really fat dragon. At one point, they even mention that it's a really fat dragon, so I can only assume that's something from the game. But yeah, when it comes out and comes to play, it's fun to watch. And probably the biggest thing I like about this movie is that I didn't have to be a fan. I mean, I've said it over and over already in this review that I'm not a fan of Dungeons and Dragons, the game. I've never played the game. I had no idea. So going into this, it could have been really easy to get lost in the myth and the different things that they use, the different trinkets, the different items that they use throughout this movie, the magical items. Like, there's a hither-thither stick, and like, had they gone just a little too far, I'd have been lost completely, because I've never played this game. I've never been inside this world. I don't know what's going on. And it's not like Game of Thrones where you got 8 seasons where you can really work this thing out. No, you got one movie, one shot. Don't lose my attention and don't lose me on the different mythological things that you're going to throw at me. And I didn't get lost. I really enjoyed how they set this movie up, how they told the story in this movie. There's a lot of storytelling to happen with this movie, and I thought they did a really good job with that. So yeah, those are all the things that I really liked about it, but the main thing that I really liked about this movie is that I didn't have to have previous knowledge to even enjoy myself with this movie. My only dislike for this movie, really, guys, is that none of the stakes really seemed to matter for any of these characters. Like, the characters would do something and they always had a way out. Now, granted, Chris Pine's character is a planner, and his whole job is that if plan A doesn't work, to have a plan B, and if plan B doesn't work, have a backup that is plan C, and so on and so on and so on. Which makes for a couple of really funny moments throughout the movie as well. So they are always constantly planning, so maybe that's why. But like, just anytime there was a pack of people being sent after them, this unstoppable pack of witches or wizards who would come after them and were trying to stop them on their journey, at no point during the movie was I like, oh, they may not make it out of this. Like, even when the dragon shows up, I'm like, nah, they're all gonna make it out. Like, the bad guys are probably not gonna be the ones making it out, and that's what happened. So it was kind of predictable in that way, in that I didn't really ever feel like any of the core characters were ever not going to make it out of a situation unscathed. That's not to say this was a bad movie. In fact, I had a really fun time with this movie. Overall, I will say that Dungeons and Dragons is a fun time. You could take your family. I kind of wish I had taken my son at this point, so down the road, it's going to be a family movie night movie when it's available streaming or on Blu-ray or whatever I decide to do with this movie. But that is my review for Dungeons and Dragons: Honor Among Thieves. There, I said it one more time. Guys, if you enjoyed this review, don't forget to hit the like and the share button. If you have seen Dungeons & Dragons and you've got thoughts and you've got comments, put that in the comment section down below so we can talk about it. You know I love talking about movies with you guys. And finally, guys, if you haven't subscribed yet, make sure you hit that subscribe button, because I got a lot of content coming your way. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Oh, hey, well, this is awkward because I had to change shirts. All right, the honest truth is I forgot to do a post-credits thing, so I'm wearing a different shirt now. I'm sorry. But if you like this review and you want to see more, click right there to see all my 2022 reviews, or right there to see all my 2023 reviews.